Happy Wednesday, y'all. You know what time it is. It's time for a Soulibration. I'm your host, Shamika Rhymes. Let me know in the chat where you are watching from. I know that there's somebody already watching from Asheville. Welcome. Yes, let me know where you're watching from and how you're doing this week. I don't know about where you are, but we got a little bit of snow. I was hoping we'd get more, but it was literally that trace amount they always talk about on the news. Remember to share this with your network. And if you have any questions at all during the show tonight, you guys know what to do. You are the co-host. Drop it in the chat and I'll make sure to get to those. So how many of you have had to be a caregiver or you're facing that decision on what to do? Well, tonight's show is for you. So caring for an aging parent while maintaining a career is a reality for many of us. As we're getting older, our parents are getting older, and it's just a decision that some of us have to face. Yet there's the emotional, the financial part, the logistical challenges, but those are the things that you don't hear a lot of people talk about, right? So tonight we're going to dive deep into the complexities of caregiving, from navigating the healthcare system to balancing work and personal life. And so we're also going to take a look at some practical advice, some self-care strategies. And you guys may remember, I think it was back in December, maybe November. Honestly, it might have been October. Well, we talked about caregiver burnout. So we're going to actually talk to someone tonight that is actually right in the throes of caregiving to see how that works and how to navigate it all. And we're also going to talk about how society can better support those in caregiving roles. So whether you're currently caring for a loved one or you're just thinking about preparing for the future, this conversation is still for you. So make sure you share this again with your network. Let me know where you're watching from. And let me introduce you to tonight's guest. Enya Flack is here, y'all. I'm super excited because I absolutely love this show. She is in her third season as the district attorney on Tyler Perry's hit BET Plus show, All the Queen's Men. You know, her character is determined to take down Madam Marilyn DeVille. Y'all know Madam. And so she has also appeared in Lifetime's Twisted Sister, Outer Banks, The Resident. That's my other show. Walker and Dynasty, my other show. She's been in a lot of the shows I like, y'all. I'm sure I'm naming some that y'all love too. And she also plays Harriet Tubman in the award-winning film Marbles and Bullets. And she is also from the Queen City. And she's transitioned from a career in broadcasting to acting. So I'm so curious about that as well. She's also had roles in The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, The Sopranos. I could go on and on and on. Welcome, Enya.
Thank you so much, Shamika. It's great to be here.
It is so great to chat with you. Listen, All the Queen's Men is my show.
Oh.
But we'll get to that later. But we're going to talk first about caregiving because that's what we're here to really dive into. So can we just hear your story on how you had to step up and be a caregiver?
Well, you know, I've been very lucky, very blessed in my life with my mom and my dad. My dad did pass away in 2005, but my mom and I have always been super close, you know, my entire life. And she's always been in spectacular health. Let me start by saying my mom is now 98 years old. And so I'm super blessed. And, but you know, she's always been in great health. And so back in 2014, she came down with shingles, and it was a particularly bad case of shingles. And so really that was truly the first time in her life, where she wasn't able to, we'll say, talk herself out of an illness. And it was not only, you know, physically debilitating for her for a while, but it really played a big job on her psyche, on her emotional status as well. And it was round about that time, a couple of years later, that I was really starting to see some changes in her. Again, I'm very fortunate that all things considered, she is in pretty good health for 98, especially. Yeah. But I was starting to notice, for example, that she was repeating herself here and there, or she didn't necessarily remember conversations that we had had, or bits or important parts of conversations that we had had. And then her eyesight was starting to go a little bit, and she she wasn't able to drive anymore. A number of things, and that's what happens as we age. It's usually, or it's often not just one ailment or one situation. It's multiple things, and those were starting to add up quite a bit. Um, so at that time, I was still in California and trying to figure
Mhm.
out, how is this going to work? But I did decide to move back in 2020. Let me see, 2019. So,
Okay.
like I said, this was a progressive thing.
Mhm.
What what really has been a real blessing for me is the fact that I was able to get a professional in-home care provider. That
Okay.
is, that has been amazing.
Mhm.
But even with this wonderful woman that has been with us for so long, it's been a challenge. It's been a real challenge, sort of navigating all of the little aspects of becoming the parent, essentially.
Yeah, I think I said on my social that I recorded really just before this, I was like, it's like we're now raising our parents. And I know mine are hard headed. They're watching, they're hard headed. But it is like raising them. And I see in the chat Gastonia is checking in. Hey y'all, let me know if you are also in a caregiver role, or if you're thinking about like what are the steps, let us know. So did your mom try to tell you, no, 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 stay in California, don't come, don't move and come back here, I'm fine? Did she try all that whole thing?
Well, I'm gonna say no with that because she had been praying for me to move back to
Oh, okay.
California for a long time. But the one thing she's always been very adamant about, she has always wanted to be independent. And
Mhm.
she does still live independently, but it's a lot easier I'm about 12 minutes away from her, my home to her home. So about 12 minutes as opposed to 3,000 miles. That makes a huge
Oh,
difference.
yeah, yeah. That was my next question, if you were actually living in the home with her. But so does the woman that you have helping to take care, does she live there around the clock, or is it just kind of a check-in thing?
It's a check-in thing. Thankfully, the symptoms from the shingles have subsided quite a bit, and at this point, mommy is just sort of, she's just a bit slower, just
Mhm.
a bit slower. She does use a cane, but she's very careful moving around. But I check in with her every day, and on the days that I can't, um, the other lady does. She comes regularly a couple times a week. So.
So how do you manage, because I'm not sure, do you guys film in it? I'm assuming you film in Atlanta for all the Queen's Men. So how do you manage like your filming schedule while juggling being a caregiver? Like what does that look like?
Well, now when I got the job, the role on the Queen's Men, I was really really concerned about that. That was one of my first concerns.
Mhm.
Um, but fortunately, and I'll tell you a little secret for anybody who wants to know, we do not shoot all the Queen's Men year round, or even it's not even a month's worth of shooting. We shoot for about 3 weeks. An entire season all in 3 weeks. So what do? I take my mom with me.
Oh, that's a good idea.
With me. And actually, I think she really enjoys it because not
Mhm.
only, she's out and getting to see, someplace different, but so I have an almost 18-year-old Yorkshire Terrier who she calls her grandbaby. And so I put her in charge of taking care of my dog. And
Oh,
it sounds like such a simple little thing, but it really gives her a sense of purpose, and she
mhm.
absolutely loves it. And I think that's really important when you're dealing with older people. They have to feel like they're needed. We all need that.
Absolutely, and I love that, and I don't know why I didn't think of that. I'm like, as many times as I've heard Tyler Perry talk about, his filming schedules are not like everybody else's. They're very like get in, film, get out. Like it's very quick. So I love that you were able to take your mom with you, and so that she could experience that. Um, so let's talk about the moment that you decided, let me move back closer. Um, what were the steps that you then took? Because, or were you already in the process of looking for someone to kind of be checking in while you were still in California? And was there an interview process? Can you just take us through those steps?
I was already sort of in the process, just sort of doing my due diligence on several different agencies that were recommended to me through a church that I grew up in and that sort of thing. And we settled on, I don't know if I can give a plug or not, but Bright Star is the agency that we ended up settling on, and it was just a process of meeting with the owner, meeting with several different potential caregivers, and finding somebody who not only I felt comfortable with, but somebody that my mom seemed to click well with. Because even at her age, she's still sounds like your mom. She's a little stubborn. So, and that's so important. Again, I think if you are looking for a caregiver, it's very important to not say, this is the one. You have to let your parents, your mom, your dad, what have you, be a part of the decision if at all possible.
Yeah, I never thought about that. I think I've seen I think it was, I can't remember who it was, but on social media it was kind of that person was just doing all the interviewing, but I didn't think, I guess it's almost like picking a nanny too. You want the kids to meet the nanny, so it's kind of the same thing. Yeah. And co-host, I forgot to mention again, I see y'all are popping into the chat. If you have any questions, please ask. So, did you have any unexpected lessons that you kind of have learned along the way and during this experience, or did you do a lot of research? Like, how did you kind of navigate this? Because I would have absolutely no clue where to start.
uh, Looking for a caregiver, or
Yeah, looking for a caregiver, or becoming one myself, like, trying to juggle everything.
well, I think the lesson that I've learned most, and this is what I've well, honestly, I am thinking about doing a podcast myself on this one at some point. Um, it's um, it's very important to find the right person for your parent, but it's also equally important to remember to take care of yourself.
Mhm.
You mentioned caregiver burnout.
Yes.
You can get very very overwhelmed. I know I did
Mhm.
because it is a very strange thing going from being somebody's child to suddenly flipping the switch and having to essentially parent them.
Mhm.
um, and it's not something, as you mentioned, that people don't talk about it. There's generally not a class that you have
Right.
to take or whatever. And so what's been super helpful for me is just talking to other people who are in the same situation or similar situation. And I personally have 4 or 5 different female friends who are all sort of going through the same thing. So and we get on the phone. We call each other like, girl, did you hear? Girl, let me tell you what you did today. Or let me tell
Uh-huh.
you what happened today, that sort of thing. And it's therapeutic. It's a little cathartic. And it sort of keeps you from feeling like you're out there all by yourself or you're crazy, whichever. There are, you can seek counseling, for example, and there are caregiver support groups as well. And so that is what I would strongly, strongly suggest to anybody
Yeah.
who's going through this. Even my hairdresser, unfortunately, her mom, she recently had to put her mom into a memory center because
Mhm.
her mom is battling dementia. And she found a fantastic Instagram account. There's
Oh,
a
yeah.
link on Instagram, and I have it written down somewhere. I can maybe put it in the chat later. But this lady has a mom who was a teacher, like my mom, and who has dementia, and she sort of chronicles everything that happens from day to day. Just something to make you feel connected to
Yeah.
to other people who are going through a similar thing. It's very important.
I see in the chat that some Donna Miller says this is really needed, a conversation about caring for your parents. Absolutely, Donna. Thank you for tuning in. Oh, yeah. So I didn't think about, finding a group, or, and it does make sense. Your friends are also kind of experiencing the same thing. So it does make sense to check in with each other. I know my friend and I, we have dinner every other week or so, and we're like, girl, what'd your parent do? What'd yours do? And it's just like, well, did yours actually, there she goes, she's asking a question. Lynette McCallum says, did you have other family to help you? And if not, like, because she's an only child, I'm just telling your business, Lynette, I'm sorry. But are you an only child?
I'm not an only child. I do
Okay.
have a brother, and he does live in this area. However, he has a large family, and unfortunately, his wife's my sister-in-law, his wife's parents have gone through a lot of illness and whatnot in the past few years too. So he's been really trying to help her navigate that. So more of it fell on me, to be
Yeah.
honest. In this case.
Yeah. Okay.
But it
Now,
is
when
great to
you
have family if you can, at least if nothing else, hey, I can't quite get to this. Can you, it's, that's wonderful too.
absolutely. So when you were, and I'm kind of doubling back here for a second, because so when you were in LA, were you in the middle of working on something when you were like, okay, I've got to like pick up and move? Were you in the middle of a project at that point, or were you kind of in between projects?
I was in between projects.
Okay.
That definitely made it a lot easier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, were there any challenges that you faced while kind of maneuvering like healthcare and the political like system? It seems like just from things that I've heard and read that sometimes it can be frustrating because it's like this person's telling you this person's telling you this, and you can't seem to make headway because you're like, okay, what's the best facility? Or if you're putting your loved one in a facility, or if you're going to bring in home care, it seems to be that sometimes there's just a lot of conflicting information. But you mentioned that you did get information from your church, but did you have any other challenges?
In this case, not too much. I mean, it is important that you learn, for example, the difference in Medicare and Medicaid, for example. What was a fantastic resource for us is that back when my mom was in her 40s, apparently, her insurance representative, I guess, agent suggested to her that because of the longevity that was present in her family, for example, my grandmother lived to be almost 103. She had two
Mhm.
sisters who lived to be 101 and 99. So that, especially with the women in my mom's family living that long, he suggested that she consider long-term care or long-term care insurance, I should say.
Mhm.
And while she was kind of thinking, "Ugh, why am I going to do that? Because people don't want that expense, especially
Mhm.
may or may not even get the benefit of it. She did decide to go ahead and do it. So I would say, if you can get it and you do have that kind of a family history, it's been, so very helpful. Another AARP was very helpful with us
Mhm.
as well, just sort of guiding us through a lot of things. Now,
Mhm.
um, I didn't have too much trouble with that. A girlfriend of mine, her parents did not have long-term care insurance, and so she's been through a lot, and they've had to do things like this is more on the financial side, but they've had to put a lot of things into her name, for example.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
and I don't know all the ins and outs of it.
Mhm.
I would say, seek professional advice on this kind of thing for sure.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I have heard about that, and I don't know either the ins and outs, but I have heard about where you're having to move their assets into your name and do all those things. So absolutely, and there's resources on blackdoctor.org. Everyone, if you have questions about those things. Um, you just mentioned I'd never even heard of the long. What did you call it? Long term care.
Long-term care insurance, I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah, I've never heard of that, and I've never even seen it. I wonder if it's still offered. I'm just thinking back to my own benefits plan and things, and I don't know, is it still offered?
I did do a Google search because I wondered about that myself, and I did see some listings on Google. I mean, I didn't dive deep into it because it's
Yeah.
not something that I particularly need or right now. I don't think.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's I think it is offered still. There are not that many places that do offer it, but again, if you know or if there's longevity in your family or whatnot, just sort of do a little analysis and see if it's right for you because I mean, that's what has enabled us to have our in-home care provider so long, for example.
Mhm.
It's a gift that keeps on giving. And,
Yeah.
so that's my mom did not have she didn't have what's it called a healthcare account. I forget what it's called.
Oh, is it an HRA or something like that? Yeah.
Like that. She didn't have that, but she thankfully had the insurance and a great pension. She was a teacher in the North Carolina school systems, and so great pension and that sort of thing. So
Yeah.
I think for our family, it's been relatively easy. It's been more just the logistics of where are you going to be at what time and finding the right people as opposed to how are you going to pay for it.
Okay. Okay. Has she been also one of those, don't you dare put me in a nursing home?
It's been just the opposite. She has always said, if it gets to the point, then I would rather I'd rather, she doesn't want to be in a nursing home, but
Yeah.
she doesn't want to be a bother and all that sort of thing. And I was like, no,
Oh, yeah.
I was like, no, would you do that to your mother? I got her like a parent at that point.
Yeah.
So no, that really hasn't been too bad for us either.
Okay. I see Donna Miller says, being a caregiver does works on your mind. She says the guilt and pressure of, am I doing it right? So let's talk about the mental health aspect of having to be that parent to your parent. How has that been for you?
It's been tough. It's been very tough. We're going through a couple legal issues right now, and and you do wonder, am I making the right decision? And you do start to, at least there's some things I've questioned myself on this. Was that the right decision? This is the right decision. Again, reach out to your friends
Mhm.
if you know anyone who is sort of in a similar, or just to have a sounding board,
Yeah.
to sort of check in with yourself. Meditate. I'm big into meditation a little bit. But yeah, you do have to really consider your own mental health for
Mhm.
sure, in order to do this effectively.
Absolutely. And that brings up, like, during that caregiver burnout conversation, we did talk a lot about different ways to kind of combat that burnout by making sure you take time for yourself. So what other ways do you kind of take a step back from that caregiver role to make sure, you said you meditate. What else do you do?
Meditate. I walk a lot. I love walking. Not today.
Yeah, not today.
But, I have a treadmill here in the house and whatnot. So, I mean, getting regular exercise, eating well if you can, just just vegging out, if you can. I mean, if you can get an
Mhm.
hour to yourself and just sort of sit back, watch a movie, read a book, whatever. Just take, dedicate yourself for, as I'll say, an hour a day if you can do it, to just
Mhm.
focusing on yourself. If I do not go to see my mom on a day that, say, our caregiver is going to be there, I do call every day, and it's funny because inevitably every time I try to get off the phone, she'll say, "Oh, did I tell you about this?" And so what was meant to be maybe a 20-minute conversation ends up being an hour and a half, that kind of
Yeah.
thing. And after that, it's a little overwhelming because she's told me, "Oh, this bill is due," or did you pay this bill? I'm like, "Yes, mom, yes, I got that. I got that too." Um, and it can be just a little, you just want to breathe afterwards. Take the time,
Yeah.
just take the time to breathe.
There was I think, I don't know if it was in that. I've done a few different kind of self-care type of episodes here, but I think there was talking about breath work and just breathing, going to a sound bath. That's one of my favorite things to do, a sound bath.
Yes, absolutely. If you know of a good one here in Charlotte, please let me know. I haven't found a great one here yet.
Oh, yes, I will definitely, afterwards, don't hang up. I'll let you know where to go.
You know what? Journaling is great too. I love journaling. Just sit and write, like do a diary, whatever. Just sit and just sort of write your feelings down. Just getting them out, whether
Mhm.
frustration, happiness, sadness, whatever it is you're feeling, just find a way to get it out in some way.
Oh, yeah, that is a great one. And it just made me think of something else. I don't know if let me know in the chat, y'all, if y'all ever done this, but going to a rage room. Have you ever done that? You just go in, you suit up, put your goggles on, your hard hat, and you just break stuff. With music, you can put on whatever music and you just go to town. They have a car in there. You can beat the mess out of that with a bat. You can throw plates, glasses, everything, and just scream.
Oh, wow. I didn't even know that's a thing. Wow. I've been okay. I need to
Yeah,
start
I
where that.
didn't either. A friend invited me, and I said, I was at that time I was stressed, and I was like, when we got done, I was like, wow, that worked.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, so
What
you already mentioned some resources and organizations that have been helpful. We touched on the financial aspect. Can you talk about, like, or any advice for those that may not have those if their parent doesn't have those plans in place, or they just don't know where to start, where should they look? You mentioned knowing the difference between Medicaid and Medicare. Is there someone else they may should reach out to get more information?
Again, AARP has just been, a
Yeah.
great resource for us. I would say go there first. I mean, do a deep dive into Google as well, of course.
Mhm.
I know that there are some, great local resources as well. Strangely enough, the Department of, is it Health and Humans? No, Department of Parks and Recreation. Strangely enough, they actually gave us a lot of ideas because they have a lot of great programs for seniors,
Mhm.
and so they're connected with good resources as well.
Okay. Now, does your mom get out to, I know they've got these adult daycares and they've got all these activities for seniors that she, and at her age, she may not want to do any of that stuff, but did you guys talk about any of those activities?
We did, and I have taken her to a few.
Oh, okay.
We did a dance class, a great arts and like a craft class. I forget what it's like. It wasn't crocheting, something like that.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
Again, that was through the Department of Parks and Recreation here
Mhm.
as well. That was wonderful. There's a dance class at her, more like a movement kind of class, we'll say, at her church. Churches are are great
Oh,
resources as well.
mhm.
Um, at our church, there is they have a great senior group. It's a pretty big group too, and they meet once a month, and they'll have musicians come in and they play, music that is kind of more to the liking of the older folks, that sort of thing. And they have dinners together. Women's groups have also been wonderful too. Women's groups at churches are great too. And they often include, women of all ages. And that is, my mom enjoys that. She doesn't want to feel like she's, quote, old. So
Yeah.
she's
Yeah.
interacting with, with people of all ages. So that's been fun for her too.
Oh, cool. I was just thinking my granddad, he was 95 when he passed, but you could not tell him he was old. He'd talk about everybody else being old, but he was not old.
Same.
It just also made me think, I think it was like my one of the TV jobs I've had around here. I went to cover a story at, I don't know if it was a senior center, or they had a seniors dance, and it was like a Hawaiian theme. They had music and food, and they just had the time of their lives. Like, they were having so much fun that I didn't know if they still did stuff like that, but that just seemed like another way to get out, be around people, dance a little bit, and just just enjoy being around others in the age group. We won't say that are old in that age group.
Exactly. I mean, and you have to think about it, just because someone is older doesn't mean that they're necessarily older in their mind.
Yeah.
Because I always think to myself, I won't go into what age I actually am, but I don't feel, I mean, I still feel like, I don't know, I'm in my 20s sometimes. And I still,
Mhm.
if you enjoy going out and doing things and interacting with people and whatnot, your mom and your dad might feel the same way. And it's all about communicating with them and saying, like, okay, what would you like to do? Do you think, and if they can, well, I don't know, I don't, start suggesting things.
Mhm.
Again, there's great stuff on the internet. I was doing some work with there's a blog called or website called Charlotte on the Cheap.
Oh,
And
yes.
so if you know that, I mean, there's so much great stuff.
Mhm.
Festivals and all sorts of things.
Mhm.
Just include your parents in whatever it is that you're doing, or and I think that is they'll enjoy that more than anything else, just being included.
Do you have advice for those parents that are for the ones that are caregiving for parents that can't get out, or they can't, that they are confined to the house? Do you have any advice for them?
Well, just again, spend as much time as you can with them,
Mhm.
because depression among the elderly is a very serious problem, and it's a pretty prevalent problem too.
Mhm.
Don't just don't let them stay at home by themselves too much. Just spend time with them. Ask them questions. Ask them questions about when they were younger? How did you do this? Again, people want to feel valued,
Yeah.
whether you're taking them out or just sitting there and talking with them. I introduced my mom doesn't use the computer. This sounds funny, but she doesn't use the computer, but she's fascinated by it. And so I
Mhm.
recently discovered Chat GPT.
Oh, that's
Yeah. So I said, Mom, this thing is amazing. I said, you can write a book with this. And so I said, if you're going to write a book, what would it be on? Oh, I don't know. I said, well, how about this? How about we put in, write an outline for a book about a young girl growing up in the 1920s in rural North Carolina.
Mhm.
That's all I put in, and it started spitting out, chapter idea,
Yeah.
chapter after chapter, and I started reading it to her, and she just was like, and it just
Oh,
resonated with her, and that sparked, a long conversation about, about what
yeah.
life was like. So, introduce them to new things. Even if, my mom's not great on the cell phone either, but she has one. So just, people they just want to feel included and a part of society and like they're not forgotten.
Yeah. Co-hosts in the chat, if you have questions, please let us know. And I am going to get to those all the Queen's Men questions. So you drop those in the chat too.
One thing I do want to mention that we haven't touched on, for anyone who is taking care of a parent in the home, and if they need to be helped physically, be
Mhm.
careful with that.
Oh yeah.
I, when my dad was still living, he was sitting on the steps once, and I went to try to pick him up, and I think I'm pretty strong, and I ended up hurting my back. My girlfriend did the same thing the other day when her mom fell. So be very careful with that, and realize your own limitations too,
Yeah.
because again, if you hurt yourself, you can't take care of your loved one. So
Absolutely.
you always
That's a
that.
great one. Yes, that's a great one. So for those that are caregiving and say they have friends that aren't in that space, what advice do you have, like, as far as, I guess, what kind of support do caregivers need from their friends that may not be dealing with this or they've never had to deal with that?
Just understand that if your friend can't do this with you, can't go to the concert with you, can't be there for you as much as you would like, that there's a reason. And you might be going through the same or similar thing one day yourself. Just be understanding. And um, I even had a girlfriend who's not going through this offer the other day. She said, well, if you need to go out of town, if you need to shoot or something, call me. I'll be happy to come by. I'm close by. I'll go. I mean, she's the
Oh
first
yeah.
person who ever did that. And that was just, I don't know if
Mhm.
I'll take her up on it or not, but just the fact that she saw that,
Yeah.
I might have a need was just so, so sweet to me, and just so appreciated.
Oh, that is sweet. I love that. I love that. If you could go back and give yourself any piece of advice about caregiving before you started that whole journey, what would that be?
Well, I guess I would have to say, and I say this a lot about myself, is just be patient.
Mhm.
Be patient, because you might have a list. I make a lot of lists, and I would just want to check the boxes as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
Um, but it takes time to find the right team of people, the
Mhm.
right fit, the right everything. So, just if you're able to just sort of take your time and know that it will all come.
Yeah, that's great advice. That's great advice. So, of course, we've got to get to all the Queen's Men. But before that, I did have one other quick question. So, is all the Queen's Men the only thing you're working on right now as far as like shooting, or are you working on some other projects too?
Currently all I'm working on, although I did have a great script come across my desk the other day, and it looks like that's going to be a go for a new, it's a television pilot. So we'll see how that goes. It's faith-based, but there's a bit of horror in it too. So it could be very
Oh,
interesting. Yeah. But there's another film that I worked on, last year that is coming out this year. I don't have the release date. I hope hopefully in the next month or two. It's called On Fire, and I am so excited to see this finally. It's based on a book also called On Fire, and it's written by a guy named John O'Leary. It's a true story about his life. When he was 9 years old, there was an explosion, chemical, like an explosion in his family home, and he was burned over 99% of his body, not expected to live. And it's basically just his story on how he not only overcame that as a child, but he's still living today. And he's you can see he's still got the burns, and he lost all of his fingers, but it's been amazing to watch and learn from him. And it's just been a real lesson in not making excuses. So, yeah, please, if you hear this movie coming out, On Fire, please go to see it. It's so inspiring and motivational.
Oh yeah, I would love to do an interview whenever it's ready to come out. I'd love to do an interview with you about that too, because I love those types of movies.
Yeah.
So your character on All the Queen's Men, I'm
Yeah.
like, where is her office?
Here's her office. She's always in the precinct.
Right. And I literally, before this, I asked my aunt used to be a detective here, and I said, is the DA always at the police department? She said, no, at the courthouse. And I said,
I don't know. I know I had a desk, at least in one scene. I don't know. I don't know where her office is.
yeah.
That's a funny question.
So what made you want to play that role?
She's that dedicated. She's working that closely with Detective Davis.
Yeah.
And so she has to be there just in case, one of Madam's dancers comes in to, grill, whatever she can use. She's got to be there all the time.
Yeah, it's like she's keeping an eye on Detective Davis, which I appreciate.
Yep, exactly.
So what made you want to play that role in this, or was this the role that you initially auditioned for?
It was, and why wouldn't I want to play that? I mean, well, it's fun for me because most of my other roles have been nicer girls, I guess. This one's pretty gritty. And you'll see she's going to get grittier. It's fun to play, a character that is a little bit different from yourself. At least for me it is. For good or bad, I tend to play by the rules. I'm daring on a lot of things, but I do try to, I try to live with the rules most of the time. We're starting to see that the DA doesn't always follow the book to the letter. Yeah, and the harder it gets for her to capture Madam, the more you'll see a bit of that.
Yeah. There was, so I think we're on a mid-season break on BET Plus right now. Because there was a couple, and I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but there was a couple scenes where I was like, what are you doing?
Yes.
You and Detective Davis.
You never know what's going to happen.
Yeah. So Bobby Miller wants to know, when are y'all back from the mid-season break?
I wish I could answer that question. I don't know. I'm actually told it may be as late as June.
Okay.
So I don't know. They don't tell me that.
Okay. Does your mother watch this show?
She watches my parts.
Okay. I didn't know she was watching the dancers.
And it's funny because I've had, a number of older people say that they watch, and I'm like, hey, good for you.
Yeah. I was telling you before, like my I don't want to call him out, but he's an elderly gentleman and he watches. He loves the show.
Hey, well, but I'll tell you, it's this show has gotten so much great, so much great praise in the last couple of years, especially. So it's getting crazier and crazier. So I think it's going to be pretty popular for a while.
I think so. I know. I'm like, oh, it's coming back. Let me renew my subscription to BET Plus.
There you go.
So how do you prepare for your scenes? And then, some of them can probably be emotionally charged. How do you come down after filming, especially because you guys are in like a tight like the 3 weeks of filming, you don't really, I don't know if you, how much time you have to kind of decompress, unless you just have to wait till after the 3 weeks.
It's pretty much after the 3 weeks,
Mhm.
because we do some long hours, some long days, usually about 14, 16 hours a day. And we shoot all we're basically shooting all 16 there's 16 episodes in a season, and you're essentially shooting all 16 simultaneously. So the way it
Mhm.
works is that, so for example, if Detective Davis and Rods are in the police station in, say, 5 or 6 different episodes, we are going to shoot every one of those scenes from every one of those episodes, usually in one day.
Oh,
So
wow.
it's a lot of memorization and a lot of,
Mhm.
it can get kind of stressful. But again, it's a great opportunity. I love doing it. And yeah, you work hard for 3 weeks and then, whew, okay. And we typically shoot later in the year. And this past season was shot right before, or I'm sorry, the upcoming season uh, was shot in December. So
Okay.
right, right, between Thanksgiving and Christmas. So, there's the holidays to look forward to right afterwards. So that's nice.
Oh, yeah, yeah. So how do you separate? Because since you brought your mom with you, so you're bringing the caregiving with you, and you gave her something to do. But how do you turn that off and then jump into acting? Do you? Because I'm sure you're in the back of your mind, you're probably worried, like, is she okay? What's she doing? All those things.
It is, and I even, yeah, and get this, I even travel with a baby monitor. And I
Mm,
put her in a
okay.
hotel room, and, and I can talk to her through it and all that. So I'm looking at my phone all the time, making sure she's okay. And I have the people down at the front desk,
Mhm.
on alert. Yeah, if my mom calls, that sort of thing. It is difficult. I'm not going to lie about that. It's very difficult, especially when you're trying to memorize loads and loads of lines and that sort of thing. It is difficult. You just sort of, again, I just usually have to just sort of step away for a minute and say, Mom, let me just let me be over here for a minute. And, I think that self-care is so difficult, especially, quite honestly, especially for women. Historically speaking, we're
Yeah.
not, we tend to be the nurturers and and the caregivers, and
Mhm.
feel a little bit guilty if we take a minute for ourselves, but you've just got to do it. And if it's a matter of your job, you really
Mhm.
have to do it. So yeah, you just
Yeah.
force yourself to find a way to sort of work through it.
So now I'm curious, how do you have, like, because you have to memorize all those scenes and all those lines. How? Especially when you're stressed from like, tell me the secret. How do you do all this?
I don't even know how to answer that question truthfully. As you mentioned before, my original idea that I thought I was going to be a journalist, and I did do that for a while.
Mhm,
Um, I tell you, when I really was started being able to memorize things quickly, I was doing sports reporting at KCBS in LA, and
mhm.
as the new person on the team, they would put me out in the at the bars a lot during football games and
Uh,
baseball games, and so I'm talking to a lot of people. There's a lot of noise, and I'm trying to write down what I'm going to say, or at least remember what I plan to
yeah,
say. And just being able to learn to simultaneously sort of think and speak and hear all of the craziness, somehow that's made memorizing lines where I just get to sit here in a quiet room, that's a lot easier. So it's like I don't even know how to really explain it other than
yeah.
that. So that
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. Yes, I totally get that. 'Cause I come from news, so I get it. That makes
you get
that
it.
makes sense.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Yeah, so what else can we expect from you? Anything else coming out? You mentioned potentially a podcast?
The podcast I'm so excited about, and it's just because, like we've been talking about this, I haven't seen many other things like this where people have this kind of discussion, and I do think that it could be very helpful for people who find
Mhm.
themselves just sort of at their wits' end and wondering. So the podcast is definitely it. I'm working on, well, we'll see if this actually happens. I have a girlfriend who worked on another Tyler Perry show, and she and I are considering doing sort of an acting class tour throughout the Southeast, just
Mhm.
sort of helping young actors, sort of giving them. She's more on the artistic side. I'm more on the business side. There's so many things about the entertainment industry, the business of the business, that I think it's so important
Oh,
for
yeah.
people to know. So we're considering doing that as well, and I think we'll probably end up doing that toward in the fall or so. And other
Okay.
than that, just looking for more work as usual, as most actors always are doing.
All right. I caught an interview you did, I think it was maybe a week or so ago, where you were talking about Beyond the Gates and that you had auditioned. And I was like, maybe, and just like the guy on there said, maybe they'll come back around to be like, we want you on the show.
I hope so, because
Yeah.
I saw the commercials and wow, it looks so good. I was up for 2 different roles, and
Yeah.
ultimately they went with other people, and that happens. But as they say, it's always nice to be considered, and I'm excited for it to come out. And especially
Yeah.
it's being shot in Atlanta here on the East Coast. It's just
Mhm.
I love it. I'm really excited to even if I'm not in it, I'm excited to see it.
Yeah. So how can people connect with you on social? Or do you have a website? How can they find you? And to keep up on when All the Queen's Men comes out again, or the mid-season break is done and we're back, and the projects you mentioned, the film and the podcast and the classes, all the things.
All of those things. Yeah. Well, I do have a website. It's just my name, enyaflack.com. And I'll announce all of those things that you mentioned on social media as well. And it's just my name on everything, on Twitter, on Instagram, on um, what's the new Instagram thing called?
Oh,
That is
the blue sky and threads and all the
Threads,
things. Yeah.
Threads, Instagram, Facebook, and I'm on TikTok, but I don't do it. So, but just my name, Enya Flack, altogether.
Perfect. So for my last question, because I ask everyone this, what feeds your soul?
What feeds my soul? There's a good question. I think it's just creativity, creativity and art. Well, art feeds my soul most. Art. I love artistic expression of all kinds. I always have since being a kid. Taking ballet lessons when I was 6, and music, going to any sort of art. Art feeds my soul more than anything else.
I love that. There's a particular type of music that you love that you just like when you hear it, you're like in your zone?
I love jazz. I mean, I love jazz. I went to a friend plays the drums for a Brazilian dance group. So they had a night in Rio the other night, and I discovered Brazilian jazz. And I guess that's what it's called. But oh my goodness! So yeah, I love jazz. I
Oh,
love
I'll have
all
to check.
kinds of music, just about all kinds of music. I like a little country, a little. I mean, yeah, I love a little of a lot of things, but
Mhm.
jazz speaks to me for sure.
Love that. I want to thank you so much. This has been so great. And I see in the chat people are saying thank you so much for this because you gave them hope. So
Oh,
thank you. Yes,
thank you.
absolutely. I see a lot of, you know, amens in the chat from earlier when you were giving advice. And so thank you for sharing your wisdom with us. This has absolutely fed our souls as well. And I want to thank my co-host in the chat for your comments and your questions. Thank you guys. For more information, like I said earlier, you can head over to blackdoctor.org. There's articles and resources over there about caregiving. And then next week, we're going to wrap up Heart Health Awareness Month with a guest. She's going to be sharing her powerful story. She is a 2-time stroke and heart attack survivor, and she's huge on TikTok. So y'all might figure out who it is, but she's big on TikTok. I know I have been laughing at her social media for a while. I didn't even know her backstory. And so I'm kind of like, wow. But anyway, she'll be here next week. So have a soul-filled rest of the week, you guys, and I'll see you next Wednesday. Have a good night.